Tom Brown's Body is supported by BetterHelp, the affordable online counseling service that's available for you anytime and anywhere. Start living a happier life today. For 10% off your first month, go to betterhelp.com/TBB.
Texas Monthly.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to the beginning of the Thomas Brown case. It's a hell of a case.
61-year-old Philip Klein is the owner of a private investigative firm in the southeast Texas town of Nederland, about an hour east of Houston. He's one of the most colorful characters I've ever come across. He's a big, imposing man, 6 feet 6 inches tall, 230 pounds, and he's brimming with confidence. Even looks like he could have stepped straight out of a TV detective show. During one of our phone interviews, he actually told me that he's often compared to Ray Donovan, the main character in the Showtime television series, who's a fixer for a big-time law firm. When Tom's mother, Penny, first called Klein's office, she reached his daughter, Caroline Gear. Caroline works for her dad. She's one of his investigators.
So Caroline was dealing with the family, and she called me in on Sunday afternoon, and she said, hey, we got a situation brewing up in Canadian Texas. I said, where the hell is that? She goes, it's up in way North Texas, last county before you hit Oklahoma. I said, okay.
How did she even know who you were?
She apparently had heard of me before and saw cases that I'd done covered by media. She did her research. And the reason she called here was she was very unhappy with the direction of the case was going.
And that was that weekend?
That was that weekend.
So Wednesday night he disappears.
Right.
They can't find him for a couple of days,
Right.
and she calls over the weekend.
Right. So I talked to her. I said, Penny, that's Philip Klein. How are you? She goes, I've heard about you. I've heard a lot about you. Everybody knows in Texas you're the go-to guy. I said, okay. What is the sheriff's department telling you? Because I'm not going to jump into somebody's backyard. If it's being investigated properly, it's being done by professional law enforcement, I usually don't get involved. So she told me the story. I listened to it. I said, okay, Penny, has Caroline talked to you about how much it's going to cost?
Klein charges between $25,000 and $75,000 to find a missing person. Neither Klein nor Penny would tell me how much she paid.
She said, we'll wire you the money today. And Caroline's already sent in a contract over to us. We need you up here. These people don't know what they're doing, and they're saying stuff that is off the wall. And I said, well, okay. So I hung up the phone, and Caroline walks in my office stood right there and goes, Jesus, they've already transferred the money to us. I said, are you kidding me? Usually it takes a week or two or some negotiating or something. No skin underneath their feet. So I said, okay, let's go. So I went home, packed a couple of bags, and got in the car, drove all night, and got up there the next morning.
No one yet knew it, but Klein's arrival in Canadian was about to split the tight-knit town apart, sparking a rivalry between the out-of-town private investigator and the hometown sheriff. I'm Skip Hollinsworth. From Texas Monthly, this is Tom Brown's Body. Episode 3. Evil has come to Canadian Texas. When Klein arrived in Canadian, 7 days after Tom went missing, he drove straight to Penny's home. What's your impression of the family?
The people of West Texas are a different breed. They're very laid back. They're very methodical. They're very honest. They're very God-fearing people. You can go up there for a week and then come back down here or Houston or Austin. It's two different worlds. It's just two different worlds. So when I first met them, I was very impressed with them.
Klein then paid a visit to the Hemphill County Sheriff's Department, where he met Sheriff Nathan Lewis. To put it mildly, Klein was not impressed.
And I saw him as an amateur from the minute I met him. The time I shook his hand, I was like, oh God, here we go. Very arrogant, GQ-ish. Everybody wore professional uniforms, but he wore golf shirts and golf pullovers that said, Hemphill County Sheriff, and wore a cowboy hat and had the fuzzy beard, not the full beard, but the fuzzy beard, very GQ. And we were like, what? When I first saw him, I thought, my God, this is the sheriff. I deal with sheriffs all over the state of Texas. I consult with a lot of sheriffs all over the state of Texas. I was kind of in shock. I kind of went, what the hell? Nathan was very demure to me. I said, please do your research on myself and my firm. We do this all over the United States and around the world. If you have any issues with me, please pick up the phone. I don't want to work in your backyard. And he kind of laughed.
Sheriff Lewis told me he did kind of laugh when he first met Klein. He thought the private investigator was nothing more than a showboat.
Drove his black Suburban lights on it, pulls up, walks in the office, and says, Penny's hired me to investigate this case, and I'm the biggest and baddest, and I've solved 1,000 cases. Okay. He was very full of himself. He said that there was nothing he couldn't do. He said that he was not going to stop until he found Tom. That's really all we talked about was how good he was.
Klein told me he asked Sheriff Lewis what he knew about Tom. According to Klein, Lewis unloaded.
I think he's gay. I think he has a fetish of wearing adult diapers and peeing in them. I was like, okay, that's a little strange, but, okay.
This is on your first visit.
This is on my first visit to the sheriff. The profile that I got was, this is a runaway, blow it off, forget it. You don't even need to be here. You're wasting your time, you're wasting these people's money, but, whatever, we're here if you need to talk to us.
Lewis denies that he ever talked about Tom this way, but he did acknowledge that he and his deputies suspected that Tom had skipped town. He let Klein look over the case file. Klein took some notes. Then he headed out to begin interviewing Tom's friends, recording his conversations as he went.
Hello. Hi, my name's Phil Klein. I'm an investigator.
Okay.
How are you today? Is Michael home?
No, he's not. He went also. So where are you from?
I'm from in Texas. I'm a private security investigator. I'm assigned to the Brown disappearance.
Okay.
Is there any way we can get him up here? I can visit with him with you guys?
Hold on a second.
I'm a child rescue specialist.
Okay. Okay, so are you with any law enforcement agency?
I am in private security, and we assist through Child Rescue Network of local law enforcement from time to time, and I'm not representing any law enforcement.
Okay.
I'm representing the family.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay.
This is Klein at Michael Castleton's house. Michael, you'll remember, was one of the 3 friends who went cruising with Tom on Thanksgiving Eve.
You can come in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in at home. Hi.
Castleton.
I'm Philip Klein.
Philip Klein.
Nice to meet you. I'll give you my card here.
You may have a seat.
Thank you.
Michael will probably be home in just a minute.
Okay. Love that bench right there. Where'd you guys get that? Hi, how are you? I'm Philip Klein. I'm senior investigator at KIC Texas and also with Child Rescue Network.
Sorry, I'm gonna go put them in the backyard.
Oh, sure.
Hold on just a second. Sorry.
No problem.
Now, Michael's 18 years old.
He is.
Yes, and he can decide whether he wants to
He can.
talk or not. So
That is true.
As he did whenever he met someone new, Klein filled in the Castleton family on his credentials.
Well, I found people in Mexico. I found people in Malaysia. I found people in...
What about anyone this young?
This is Michael, by the way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you do child, but I'm saying like an adult that's 18.
A 15-year-old ran away with her softball coach, and they got a job on a cruise ship down in the Greek islands. Excuse me, I was able to find them. I mean, I've been able to find, I guess, the one everybody watched me on Dateline on was the one with Patrick McDermott. Olivia Newton-John's missing.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Well,
That was me and my team.
Like you said, you got 85%.
We're 84, 85%. Yeah, you're only as good as your next case. So.
Yeah.
Klein also took the time to explain his interviewing technique.
Now listen to me, before you start talking, I'm a profiler, okay?
Right.
The way we work is we paint a picture,
Right.
okay? So we get a little red over here, a little blue over here, a little green over here, then we paint this picture, then we step back and look at the picture, and we can kind of know what we're looking at. So paint me a picture of Tom.
I don't know. He was funny. I mean, I know he had...
That's what everybody says, he's a funny guy.
He was funny. I mean, he always seemed... He was, like, exuberant, like, loud-ish.
Did he have any enemies in town?
No, not that I can think of. No one that I ever knew disliked Tom.
Everybody liked him.
Yeah.
I gotta ask the question, did he use a little weed? Did he use any meth? Did he use any,
He's drinking maybe 4 times in his life.
Okay.
He would never smoke or do anything like that.
As Klein conducts his interviews, you can hear him trying to piece together a profile of Tom. Here he is talking to Caleb King, another one of the friends who was with Tom on Thanksgiving Eve.
Your dad's a state representative.
Yes.
Is he enjoying it?
Yeah, he likes it a lot.
Good. It's a fun time down there.
Oh, I know.
It can become high pressure too.
Oh, it is.
So what I want to try to do is I just want to hear from you. Tell me about Tom. When did you guys first meet, or have y'all been lifelong friends, or what do we got?
Well, I mean, I've known Tom since probably 2nd grade when he moved here.
So let's get to senior year. We'll get into our senior year. How's he doing? I mean, he's elected class president.
Right.
I mean, what's that all about? I heard he gave a good speech. Is that right, or something?
Oh, yeah.
Killed it? That's what everybody says. All your friends say, boy, he got up there and he killed it.
Mm-hmm. He did.
How was his speech? Tell me about it.
It was really just funny, and that's why people voted for him.
Everybody said they were on the floor laughing.
Oh, yeah, it was hilarious.
Tell me about with girls. Was he attracted to girls, do you think?
Oh, yeah, he was extremely attracted to girls.
Well, let me just ask you flat out. Is he heterosexual, or do you think he had homosexual tendencies?
No, I never thought that.
And here is Klein talking by phone to Christian Webb, the third of Tom's friends who went cruising with him the night he disappeared. When Klein called her, Christian was already back at Oklahoma State. That day she was on her way to the football game, where she would be playing her piccolo in the marching band.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you had a couple of minutes I could visit with you.
Yes, sir. I am about to go into a football game right now. Let me try and find a quiet place.
Okay, very good.
Klein asked her about the last moments she and Tom spent together on Thanksgiving Eve.
He seemed really happy. Everything seemed fine. And, we drove around and listened to music until about 11, and I got tired of driving. And so we went and we sat in the parking lot for about 30 minutes until I had to go home.
Okay, about 11:30?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that night he was just happy-go-lucky. Nothing was wrong. Everything was good. Take me from there. So when you dropped him off, what did he say he was going to do?
I figured he was going home. He didn't say what he was going to do. And, you know, we'd made plans to hang out the rest of the week. He was going to come over to my house on Thanksgiving and hang out with my family.
Right.
And he was going to come visit me in college. We'd made plans to do that over the spring.
Right. I was going to knock.
Hi, sir.
Hi, Philip Klein. What's your name?
Rose Pennington.
Nice to meet you.
Finally, Klein dropped in on Tom's ex-girlfriend, Sage Pennington, and her family.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm up over 1,100 cases now, and I know what I'm doing, and I know how that manifests itself, and I can write books after books after books on this crap now. But
Sage told Klein that she had met Tom in theater class. They started going out when she was a senior and he was a junior.
Is he the kind of guy that gives people little gifts? Like, would he ever give you a little gift, or?
I mean, he gave me a necklace, and then he gave me like a stuffed corgi because he knows I love corgis, but that was like the only thing.
That says a lot. You know, he was trying to give you something he knew you liked.
And then Klein switched gears.
So let's talk a little bit about, I want to go to his dark side. Tell me all about his dark side.
I mean, I really don't know. I just know, so he's always kind of like a fetish, I guess, but I always figured it's...
Slow down. This is very important.
Yeah.
So let me hear about this fetish.
You might remember that Sage had been the first person to tell a sheriff's deputy that Tom liked wearing adult diapers. When Klein looked through the sheriff's case file on Tom, he had read her statement.
Okay, so back up. Let me hear a little bit about the diapers. Don't be shy. Did you ever catch him wearing diapers?
No.
Did you think that was weird when he said to you, well, I like to wear diapers?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I thought it was weird and not appropriate for the age.
Yeah. And did you tell him that? Or did you just go,
No.
oh, jeez?
No, I didn't tell him because he already felt so bad about it. And I didn't want to, he already felt like a freak. I didn't want to make him feel more bad about himself.
At the time, Sage and just a couple of other girls who were close to Tom seemed to be the only people in town who knew anything about Tom's alleged fetish. Christian Webb told me Tom opened up to her about it in the summer of 2016, just before she headed off to college.
I believed that it was something we texted about, if I recall correctly.
Did he try to explain why he wanted to wear a diaper?
He just told me repeatedly that he just really liked it, and it gave him pleasure.
Did it scare you?
It had me a little concerned, but a lot of these things are kind of natural, and people can't help them. And I mean, if he was kind of handling it in a healthy way, then it didn't really bother me.
When I sat down with Tom's mom, Penny, his older brother, Tucker, and his stepfather, Chris, they said they were stunned when Sheriff Lewis first brought up Tom wearing diapers. They did acknowledge that they had once caught Tom wearing them, but it was just once, they said, and that was back when he was in middle school.
I have nephews that were little and they were still in diapers. And so then he would try to wear their diapers, and then he would wear them, I guess, kind of off and on for a while. And then we caught him with them. And then, to my knowledge, he stopped. There was nothing else ever about it again. There were no diapers anywhere. I mean, that had been a non-issue for several years.
Lewis, however, said he had an obligation to look into Tom's life.
When I was told about Tom's fetish with wearing diapers, that just opened up a whole new thing in wondering, what are we dealing with here? I just knew that we had to put him under a microscope. I had never dealt with a missing person before. I've never taken on a lead role at that level. It's never easy to put somebody under a microscope to figure out their things, that they hide or don't want people to find out. It's a hard thing to do. And it was even harder to share things like this with the family or the mother, things that we had found out or things that we had found out that we needed more answers to.
It led Lewis to wonder whether Tom had been engaging in any other secret behaviors.
I mean, I want to call him sick and weird, things that he was involved in and what he was doing.
But everyone who knew Tom said it was absurd to believe that he was sick or that he was leading a secret life. When I called Sage, she said that as far as she knew, Tom had only worn diapers a handful of times.
What were things you said to him?
Well, I would just tell him you need to probably talk to somebody professional, go to your parents about it. Also, that God loves you, you're not a freak, you don't need to be ashamed of yourself. Everybody has their battles that you can overcome.
Sage insisted that Tom was a regular guy, just like any other Canadian boy. He just happened to struggle with typical teenage insecurities in his own way. When Tom and Sage broke up in November 2016, Sage said he was characteristically sweet. Sage was already a freshman at West Texas A&M, and Tom told her he planned to attend Oklahoma State the following year, which would only increase the distance between them. He told her he hoped she would find a good guy to be her next boyfriend. Sage was still so fond of Tom that she wrote him a lovely goodbye letter that read, in part, "I know God will bless both of us." On November 22, 2016, the day before Tom disappeared, Tom and Sage actually saw one another at a Canadian high school basketball game. She was in town for Thanksgiving. They didn't speak that night. They happened to be sitting on opposite sides of the gym. But Tom later texted Sage, saying that he was sad and that he felt like a loser. "I'm sad too," Sage texted back. I miss you a lot, and you are not a loser. She texted him again the next night, Thanksgiving Eve.
Because from knowing him and just some of the issues he faced and stuff, I knew he was struggling, and so I checked on him.
But by then, Tom's phone had been turned off, and he never responded.
Maddie here from Texas Monthly. Today, I'd like to talk to you about mental health. We all struggle with it. I certainly do. And this past year has definitely been more difficult than most. But that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp's licensed professional counselors are there to meet with you in weekly video or phone sessions that work with your schedule, and you can always message your counselor. Within 48 hours, you get matched and start communicating with a specialist that is trained to help you start living a better life. BetterHelp offers a wide range of expertise that may be harder to find in your area, and it's available worldwide. BetterHelp is not a crisis line, not another self-help site. BetterHelp is professional counseling, so of course, anything you share is confidential. So whether you'd like professional help from a therapist that specializes in depression, anxiety, stress, identity, relationships, trauma, anger, grief, self-esteem, or any other challenges so many of us face, BetterHelp is there to help you begin your journey. Start living a happier life today. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/TBB. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. That's betterhelp.com/TBB for 10% off your first month. Thanks, BetterHelp.
If Sheriff Lewis had developed certain suspicions about Tom's disappearance, private investigator Philip Klein began coming to very different conclusions. As Klein made his rounds, he asked the teenagers he interviewed if they could imagine Tom attempting suicide. Here's Klein with Michael Castleton.
He ever threatened to kill himself?
No.
Ever talk suicide?
I mean, I heard him say it, like, I'll kill myself, but that was in like a joking way. Like, people say that, so I don't know if you...
I get it, but he didn't ever say to you, man,
Not seriously.
I'm done.
He
I'm
never
done.
said anything like that seriously to me.
Tom's friend Christian said suicide didn't make much sense to her either. After all, she and Tom had made plans for him to come over to her house on Thanksgiving Day.
And that's something else that stood out to me and kind of makes me think that he didn't commit suicide, is because typically if you plan to commit suicide, then you don't make plans for the following day.
Klein began telling Tom's friends that he too was skeptical Tom had taken his own life. For one thing, Tom's body had not been found. Klein said that's rare in cases of suicide.
If you're going to kill yourself as a teenager, you want your body found. This has to be a splash. This has to be a big thing. Remember, he's big into drama.
And if Tom was contemplating suicide, Klein asked why he would carry so many things with him after parking his Durango.
People that are going to kill themselves don't carry their laptops, their wallet, and their phone, and their stuff. I don't think it's a suicide. I really don't.
Klein said the more he thought about it, the more he suspected that a crime had been committed. Tom had been kidnapped, maybe even murdered. Here he is talking to Sage.
Have you ever heard of the website Backpage?
No.
Never heard of any of those?
No.
Those are very black sites. You can get in a lot of trouble there. It's the internet. It's not the internet, it's the internet. Do a couple of clicks and it sends you to a world that sexual fantasies, sexual fetishes, trading boys for boys, girls for girls, swingers, the whole bit. It's all there. Prostitutes, it's all there. And the kids have figured it out. And some very nefarious characters hang out in there. I mean, they're killers. They prey on people. And then you hook up with them. They say, okay, I'll come pick you up at midnight. Yeah. Just be over here on the corner. They can come pick you up. But you never come home. Yeah. And they kill you. We're looking at the possibility that there was a third party out there that he was keeping a relationship with on either Backpage or one of the other Instagram fake profile on Facebook.
Klein also began floating another theory when he talked to Tom's friends. He suggested that Tom might have encountered someone he knew just before midnight on Thanksgiving Eve. According to Klein, that person might have murdered Tom, driven Tom's Durango to an unknown area to dump his body, then parked the vehicle at the water treatment plant and walked back into town. That would mean the killer was probably still living among them in Canadian. Here's Klein talking to Caleb King.
There's bad people out in the world. Son, there's bad places out there and bad people. You've got to be on your toes at all times. Makes you want to get over there to the church and get on your knees and say a few words, right?
Right.
I got you. Welcome to my world. I do this for a living. You won't meet guys like me very often, or I pray you don't. We live in a very dark world.
Worse than
you'd ever dream. We've seen it all. And then the phone rings, and we see one more. And that's the gospel. Evil has come to Canadian Texas.
Klein was so convinced there was a crime to be solved that he brought in another private investigator to help him with the case.
And that was?
Jane Holmes. And so,
how do you spell her last name?
Holmes, like Sherlock Holmes. You can't make this shit up.
Holmes, who's based outside of Atlanta, Georgia, specializes in conducting interviews. She has thick blonde hair and a soft southern drawl. She's the perfect counterpoint to Klein's TV detective act. She arrived in Canadian on New Year's Eve in 2016. about 6 weeks after Tom disappeared. That night, she and Klein tried to squeeze some information out of members of the Wildcats high school football team. They met the players at their favorite hangout, the high school football stadium parking lot.
How many of you guys were on the football team?
Name somebody that's not swing a cat. Everybody.
Okay, all of you. So tell me, I know us old folks, we get on Facebook. How do y'all communicate social media wise? Do y'all get on any sites like Kik or anything like that?
No, not Kik, no.
No?
Tinder?
That's not us.
I was just kidding, y'all. Y'all know I was just kidding, right?
I'm not that desperate.
Oh, God dang it.
I mean, is there any we're just keep in mind, we're not going to judge anybody, but we're just wanting to know, is there any kind of underground network around here that people do things on the dark side?
Underground network. Is there any kind of underground network in this community where people could get on the dark side of things?
Just like drugs or what? Like,
well, that may be
drugs.
There's drugs everywhere.
Meeting up with people.
Drugs, sex, rock and roll. I mean, come on. Yeah, meeting up with people.
No,
there's
no like prostitutes and stuff like that.
No, or
Somebody said some truckers come through town and make people a little nervous every once in a while. Is that true?
Not that I know of.
Okay. We're all guys here, right?
Right.
Hold your ears. You ever into any weird shit?
Not that I know of.
No? Come on.
He didn't hang out with sketchy people. He hung out with cool people that we all talked to.
You smoke any dope?
No, I've never seen dope on him.
What about drinking? Now, come on now.
I don't know.
Well, we heard about some bonfires out there north of the city, and everybody drink a couple of beers, and nothing big, a couple of beers. Do you ever see him do that?
I've never gone out there, sir.
Okay.
I wouldn't know.
Did he have any enemies you know of?
Who, Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Tom. Like, everyone loved him. He was great.
Everybody loved Tom?
Yeah.
So nobody bullied him? He didn't bully anybody? None of that? Okay.
Nobody wanted to whip his ass for getting out of football?
We accepted it. Like, it was fine. It was just
like if anyone quits, it's like it's your decision.
yeah.
As Holmes helped Klein interview people all over town, Sheriff Lewis was also getting some help. He'd called an FBI agent from Amarillo and a Texas Ranger from the nearby town of Pampa to come to Canadian and sift through the case file. The officers were struck by a statement that one of Tom's high school friends, Macy Patterson, had given to a sheriff's deputy. Macy said that she and Tom had talked about how easy it would be to disappear from Canadian as long as they didn't use a cell phone, credit cards, or anything else that was traceable. They could sneak out of Canadian and never be found. Maybe, Lewis and the officers speculated, that's exactly what Tom had done. He had taken off to start a new life.
We talked about jumping trains. We talked about, going that area, the train goes that area. We talked about jumping trains. We talked about the slow-moving trains that go through here. He might have hitched a ride from a truck driver.
The lawman also considered the possibility that Tom had arranged for someone to show up in Canadian and pick him up. The officers asked Penny, her husband Chris, and Tom's father Kelly to come to the sheriff's department. According to Penny, a Texas Ranger laid out what he thought had happened.
He just said that, well, I really haven't looked through all of the investigation, but, from what they're telling me, I think that your son just ran off. He's gay, homosexual. He's found this older man that he's hooked up with. And so he's just off with him somewhere. And, the great news is that he's alive. And when he wants to talk to you again, he'll pick up the phone and call you. That was basically it. It was kind of like, your son's a freak. I mean, they didn't use that word, but basically what they were saying is, your son is a freak. He's gone off and joined the circus. He's alive. He'll show back up when he's ready. I asked him, so where did you get this? Well, friends and, and I'm like, well, what friends? Well, we can't tell you. And I said, well, funny to me, I've talked to a lot of kids too. I haven't had any kids tell me that he ran away or that he was gay. Well, but the kids lie to you. Okay. I said, well, I don't have a teacher, a coach, a kid, a pastor, a youth pastor. I don't have anybody who has told me that Thomas is gay.
Lewis was at that meeting, and he told me he doesn't remember Tom's sexuality being discussed at all. And he said that Penny is exaggerating, that the officer only brought up the possibility that Tom might have left Canadian with another man.
I really think that conversation was more of a discussion conversation versus, him just saying this is what happened. Saying, hey, he could have got in with somebody. He could have got in with an older man. I remember that conversation.
Nevertheless, it wasn't long after that meeting that Lewis decided to go public with the runaway theory.
What kind of a show is this? Well, it's interesting, fun, and local. Chris and Ken, weekday mornings.
It's as American as apple pie.
On 98.3 KXDJ.
In January 2017, the sheriff appeared on Chris Samples' radio talk show, which is broadcast out of the nearby town of Perryton. Samples is sort of like the town crier of the northeastern panhandle.
Welcome into the final hour of the program, 9:15 with Chris Samples, here on the Information Leader, the region's #1 rated adult radio station by a ton. From Wheeler to Stratford, from near Amarillo all the way to Beaver, Oklahoma.
By this point, Tom's disappearance was the biggest story in the panhandle, and Samples gave Lewis a full 20 minutes, without commercial interruption, to talk about the case.
I have been hoping and praying that all of a sudden we'll find a young man. Is there any reason to believe that that kind of a scenario might be remotely possible?
Chris, it's absolutely possible. So last week what we did, we set everything down, put everything out on the table, had a conference, if you will, and just went over everything. We had the family come in, we visited with them, we told them where we're at, what we're doing, what we're looking through. So what that entailed was looking over everything that we have found through the young man's home, through his vehicle, talking to friends, close confidants, and everything that we have learned through this investigation, Chris, has led us to believe, we are quite positive, us and also the DPS officials and the Rangers, that Mr. Brown left on his own. We have interviewed a mass number of people. What we are coming up with by these interviews is going back and determining that the young man did leave voluntarily. We have not found anything at this point on giving us a direction of who he left with. So, no, we have no idea on somebody that helped him out. But, yes, somebody did help him out. Somebody does know where Mr. Brown is, absolutely.
What kind of a challenge is it, Sheriff, to orchestrate this kind of a, what has become now maybe even a national search? When you say, okay, we've got a missing person here who has evidently left on their own free will, what does it take for a sheriff's department in Canadian Texas to tap in to that national network? Because there are thousands of missing people out there.
Chris, it does. It happens every day. So it's a tragedy every day that somebody does go missing, whether it's on their own account voluntarily or against their will. People go missing every day, and it's horrible, and it's something that nobody should have to go through at all. We are not going to stop looking for him. We're not going to stop doing the things that we're doing here. The tragedy thing about it is he's a high school senior, and he's a son.
Mm-hmm.
He's a brother. He's a friend of the community. And so we're going to do everything and still do everything we can to locate him and bring him home.
At this point, Philip Klein had offered no evidence to back his theory that Tom had been killed, and Sheriff Lewis had provided no evidence to back his theory that Tom had run away. But interest in the case continued to surge across the region. The owner of Toot and Totem, a convenience store chain, announced a $5,000 reward to the first person who provided information leading to Tom's return or recovery. Predictably, phone calls flooded the sheriff's department. Someone called to say he had seen Tom at a Chicken Express in Amarillo. Someone else claimed to have spotted Tom at a coffee shop in Clovis, New Mexico. Of course, none of the tips panned out. As the weeks passed, there was no sign of Tom at all. No cell phone pings, no texts, no digital footprint, no physical evidence. Tom, it seemed, had become a ghost. On February 1st, 2017, a little more than 2 months after Tom disappeared, a prayer vigil was held at the Canadian High School gym. Around 100 townspeople were there, packed together at center court. Everyone received a pebble with the inscription, "Just make it home," on one side, and Tom's name on the other. They sang hymns, and they listened to a sermon delivered by the youth pastor from the Methodist Church. "Our innocence is lost," he said. "Tom is not with us." But the day after the service, a new rumor began to spread through Canadian. It was the first big break in the case since the night Tom disappeared. 4 miles east of town, on a lonely farm-to-market road, someone had found Tom's backpack. Next week on Tom Brown's Body.
We get a tip from a deputy, the backpack from the car has been found. Where was it found? 6.7 miles to the left on Lake Marvin Road. We're like, holy shit.
Tom Brown's Body is a Texas Monthly production. Executive producer is Megan Crite. Produced and engineered by Brian Standifer, who also wrote the music. J.K. Nickel is our editor, and Paul Knight is our fact-checker. Audio assistants are Sean Cronin and Emma Jane Hopper. Our theme music is No Hard Feelings by the Avid Brothers. I'm your writer and host, Skip Hollinsworth. If you like the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. See y'all next week. If you're enjoying listening to Tom Brown's Body, be sure to check out the latest podcast from Texas Monthly, State of Mind. On State of Mind, you'll hear stories from our talented writers and a wide array of other Texans that help shine a light on life in the Lone Star State. Each episode features a different story, with topics ranging from love and loss to family to music, food, history, and all the rest of what makes life in Texas something special. Listen and subscribe to State of Mind wherever you get your podcasts.